So having accomplished the page division exercise and looking at what format I want to use, um, we start to think about in value sketches, we start to think about how do I want to take that value sketch and how do I want to implement a painting. So here I'm starting the painting. I've got my sketch. I'm just going to lay in some color. I've pre-wet the paper with just a light spray of water, and I'm just laying in some tones, trying to block out the major grays and shapes of the painting. I drop in some color on the buildings, just again separating cool and warm. I've got warm on the left and cool on the right. And now I'm going to drop in a little bit of warm up high out of the shadow area for the building on the right hand side. Lay in some more cool. And I'm setting up this yin and yang, this warm and cool juxtaposition in the painting. As we work through the painting, we'll accentuate that. Now I've taken tissue and I've wiped out some of the paint lines. I'm creating an A format. We are an A composition. We'll have another video that'll talk about composition. We went over that a little bit on Monday, but this is one of the A composition formats. There's Z, A, H, L, vignettes, and O's. Primarily those are the compositional structures that we'll talk about. But this one's an A because it all points toward the center line, accentuating the center vanishing point of this one-point perspective. Here I'm dropping in my figures really quickly because of the way I've done the video, it's real quick. Lifting out the heads like I've shown, dropping in some value on the vanishing point, accentuating that with some color, and pushing that color around the painting so it's got some sections of the painting where there'll be a likeness of that color. It'll just tie it together. Dropping in the awning line of the building in the left-hand side. Now I'm going to carve out some of those awnings from that red that I put down. And that's the foil I was talking about in the sketches. You know, that middle area where I'm putting the mid-tones and the darks. It acts as a foil or a backdrop, and it pushes out that carved out or cut out area of the awning. And again, I don't want that to be the center point of the painting, so I just want to indicate it, and then I'll work on that and put some color on it later. I'm just putting some red marks into the painting, into the dark areas to kind of brighten them up a little bit. There's my mid-tone going into the center and dark going into the center of the painting. I had to let it dry so that I could do some layering, darker layering on the top of the painting. But you can see I've captured the essence of the sketches, and we'll show those up at the end of this video. But I'm mixing up some. There's some jewelry going over the top, some darks. I'm just going to punch out some darks over the top of those background washes of the buildings. What that does is it helps to push those buildings into the background and push the foreground closer to us. I'm putting some red paint into the faces of the figures in the foreground, and I'm dropping in some red on top of the awnings. Again, I'm picking out color. I'm placing color in the middle ground to the foreground area, and I'm letting the background just sort of go into the back. There's a tree line there, and I'm indicating that by I put in a wash of an olive green, and then I went over the top of it with there we go, with the lemon yellow, and it's just putting some highlights on top. Spray it down, join those two colors together. And now I'm putting in some highlights on the figures as we go. And that'll help pop them and carve them out of the background space. little bit of design and design strokes on that building. Here's my boss. My boss coming to make sure I'm getting the job done. So we're getting close to the finish here. We're about halfway done with the painting. Dropping in some more highlights. Now highlights I usually reserve for the end. However, in this case, I'm dropping in highlights just so that I can help myself see the foreground coming forward. And I'm looking at the painting now and I'm trying to think, okay, so what kind of detail can I drop in? I'm dropping in these white highlights right in the center of the painting, right where the 1-point perspective is vanishing, and then I'm carving out that figure on the right with a foil, so it just pushes out his head and shoulders by putting that dark behind him. Again, I've taken my knife, I'm doing some scratching in. I'm just scratching in some highlights on the foreground figures, a couple of marks through the background, little swash in the middle of the painting of color. Here's the finished painting next to the grayscale sketch for you to reference. Here's the finished painting, and again, the original photograph from which we did the work.
So I want to take and lift out some of the color in the middle of the painting, take it back to the white paper, and in doing so I accentuate the 1 point perspective, or the A shape in the middle of the painting.